Welcome to Be the Good with Kate, the show where guests leave you inspired to uncover your passions and discover tangible ways to make a difference along the way. I'm your host, Kate Chericello-Tente, and here I talk to individuals who are doing just that. Individuals from all walks of life and industries following their passions and making the world a better place while they do. With guests hailing from Bali to Utah, Florida to Japan, and just about everywhere in between, something I love about human connection and inspiration is how you certainly don't need to be from the same place or a similar background to get so much out of hearing from a person. In fact, I think it is better that way. We notice how we as humans are so similar in so many ways, and how each of us has so much power to make a difference in our own lives and the lives of others. I hope you're inspired here to start, restart, or continue your journey of finding your passions and helping others along the way. I love a text saying, "This made me think of you today." If there is someone in your life who could use today's story, click share and send their way. And thank you for helping to inspire more people. Now onto this week's episode. Let's spread a little more goodness in the world. Welcome back to Be the Good with Kate. I'm so excited to introduce you to Jennifer Apple. She comes from my background as well in the theater world. Jennifer, we haven't talked about multi-hyphenates in a while on this show. In prior seasons, I feel like it came up every episode. So today we are back talking about being a multi-hyphenate. She is an actor, an acting coach. She has been on national tours and won awards for acting. She's been at regional theaters all over the country, on Law and Order, SVU, has a certificate in Citizen Artistry, which you're going to have to tell me about what that means, because I actually don't know what that is, and an MFA in acting from the American Conservatory Theater. And she's the founder and executive director of the Empowered Artists Collective, a community that helps foster sustainable and thriving careers in the arts. And she hosts the Empowered Artists Collective podcast. Jennifer, thanks for being here today.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's always so weird hearing your bio.
I know, right. Well, the part though that I really loved was I have a submission form when people want to be a guest, that they reach out and they tell me a little bit more about their backgrounds, and something that you wrote outside of your bio that I also am going to read a little bit of, but I want you to expand upon it, that I really loved is you said that I believe that I really aim to understand. I don't claim to know anything, and the more I know, the less I know. I believe in the messy middle. And you talked about meeting people where they are. So tell us more about how you are doing that, what you are doing on the day-to-day now, and expand upon it all for us.
Yeah. Oh, this is fun. I think, as I've continued to be in this wild artistic industry, and as I've continued to do work on myself in an ever-changing world around me, I think there's something to be said about growing and wisdom and things that, I didn't maybe know in an earlier part of my life that now I have more clarity on. And I think there's something about me specifically who I've always really wanted to understand things. Like I think it's important for empathy. I think it's also just like important to understand the way in which I show up in the world, and therefore how can I meet other people where they are so that I can, then there's like a meeting of actual people together. So I think with all of that, I think I don't know much, as in like I know a lot, but the more I know, the less I know, because there's still so much more to know. And then even when I think I know something, the world changes and I have to unlearn the things to then learn new things. And, the more humans I interact with, the more life experiences I then interact with also. And then it becomes a matter of like, okay, cool. Like what do I now need to learn to show up to meet these people? And it shows up in the way in which I perform, certainly the way in which I approach material and the material that speaks to me. And then certainly with the way in which I coach, very much in the way that I coach and I teach. I am definitely, not a one size fits all kind of coach or teacher. I really see the human in front of me and the needs that they are expressing, and really try to meet them where they are and where they're coming from. I don't think I can coach unless I'm really seeing the human in front of me. And then certainly with I'm also a writer. So I just finished a new full-length play. And
oh my gosh.
And so, the characters in that world and what they're unpacking. And certainly when I'm, the host of the podcast and interacting with guests and bringing on people that know things that I don't know, and trying to be a space for resources for people. So I think, yeah, in all these ways, it's like me trying to continue learning and growing. And the messy part of it is the journey part. It's the the creating part, not the like final product of the thing. And I try very hard to stay in that as much as possible so that I don't fall, into the trap of like, we only can share once there's a final thing. I don't know if I subscribe to that.
Yeah. And something I really like that you're saying too is that idea that we need to keep learning too. We don't know it all. And I think even though that seems so basic, so many people are so stuck in, well, this is the way, or this is the way it's always been, or this is what I believe today and it's never changing. And you pointing that out is huge, especially we're going into a new year here. And just that idea of being open and learning, because there's probably a million famous quotes, but there's definitely one about when we stop learning, we die, that quote. And it's so true. So you're a living, breathing example of that constant adapting, learning.
Trying. Yeah, I'm really trying to. I think it's also just, remembering that like things are always moving, right? Like that, it goes back to the quote that you just kind of vaguely misquoted. But
exactly. Paraphrased greatly.
Yeah, exactly. If we're not moving, then we are dying kind of vibe. And without being as bleak as that, there really is something to be said around like the momentum of even just taking a single step forward is still more than not. And I do think that even that single step forward is hard. It's really hard, especially when the world is hard. And so to even be brave enough to be like, okay, let me just be a little uncomfortable in this moment and take a step forward. I do think that is our responsibility as humans, but it's also like things are tough, and to take that can be really intense and big.
And this question is going really into detail, and then I want to take it back and kind of have a more macro way of talking about everything. But first, how do you then approach that in someone you're coaching specifically? Where, I know as an actor, you see people who are so nervous, so self-conscious, who have gone through, like, we don't know their backgrounds, they've been told they're not good enough. And how do you do that? How do you meet them where they are? What is it that you have discovered are the skills you need and the traits and all of that?
Yeah. I don't think I have a particular method. Like I'm not, going in with like Stanislavski and this is how I go, I've been very privileged in that the training that I have had has never been prescribed to me. It's never like, this is the way and the only way. I have also had the privilege of learning from a vast slew of gorgeous individuals who also have their own ways of teaching. And I think, I've taken what's worked and left what hasn't. And so with that, I don't have like a one way of doing it, but I do think that is what is consistent for me with the individuals that I coach is I again, like I can only meet them where they are. So I think a lot of it is truly holding space for whatever is, right? So it's, if I have a new client who I'm engaging with, it's like, okay, like, what do you need is a big thing. And even somebody being asked that question, it's sometimes to actually have to think about that. Oh, like I actually get to claim that for myself. Like, what do I need? And then turning inward to be able to self-reflect around like in this moment, what is a big need in my life? What feels like a need? There is definitely like a little bit of holding space for things that maybe fall into the realm of just like being a human before maybe even getting to the work. Sometimes somebody really just wants to be seen and heard for all of the things that they cannot share elsewhere. And the grievances that you just even mentioned, it's like, this has been really hard and I've been trucking at this for so long. And I just want to feel insert whatever here. And it's like, okay, well, clearly this is a need, and you're not getting this need met. And I want to be able to give you space to have this need met here at least. Or maybe it is, a little bit more tangible tactile skills of like, cool, like I haven't, really worked on monologues before. And I know, Jennifer, that this is like a really big thing that you do. I do this thing called monologue sourcing. I find monologues specifically for people. And it's like, I know this is what you do, so it's like, okay, great. You've come to me for a very specific set of skills. Let's talk about where you've come from, right? Like, again, I can't come in and assume anything, nor would I ever. And it's also like, even if every single person came to me and they're like, I want you to help me with monologues. I don't know what your history is with it. I don't know if you have a resistance about something. I don't know your skill level in terms of breaking down text. I don't know, the kind of way in which you enter into a piece. Like, let's explore where you come from. And I can meet you there. So I'd say that's not like a tangible way of working, but
it's great. It's great. It makes so much sense. And I think something too for people in any industry, what you're saying as well is that idea of meeting people where they are and not jumping to conclusions, no matter where we are in life. It's so needed. I mean, we see our world right now. We need that empathy, like you said before, and that reminder of no matter what industry we are in, when we have to have that human interaction, how are we showing up for others? And obviously in the acting world, it's so pronounced because that's what we do, right? We embody these humans and these characteristics. But in any industry, I love that you are just talking about how you are doing this on a daily basis, because it is something that anybody can pick up details from.
Yeah, I also just think it's a helpful reminder that, like, what we as artists do, I think in an ideal world is like we really are the vessels through which people are seeing themselves, right? Like you are storytelling, you are bringing a character through you to life. And without us then getting to know ourselves, and without us like reminding ourselves that we are humans first, you cannot access other humans, characters, worlds without first being with oneself and getting to know oneself, and without any judgment. I think it's like, okay, cool. Like today I'm feeling, insert these words, today the world feels really heavy for me today, and my body feels really, broken and stressed. And that's where you're coming from. Like, I think we want very intensely to perhaps like shift the truth of what is, because it doesn't feel good. But that isn't the purpose of what we do, but also like how it is to be a human. Like, to be a human is to be where you are. And so if that is where your starting point is on that day, then let's find ways and tools for us to be able to meet ourselves and then do the work, or meet ourselves and then show up, as opposed to, cool, this is what I'm feeling, I don't want to be feeling that, let's push this away and pretend that it's not there. And then those things are going to manifest themselves in all sorts of places. And again, this is as an artist or just as a human. Like, it's like you can have a really bad day and it's like, well, that isn't happening, I don't want it to happen, it's not what I want. Okay, well, I guarantee you, when you talk to your coworker today, subconsciously, there is a part of you that is going to be bubbling around this frustration that you are experiencing, and it's going to come out in a way that you don't intend to at all, not, and truly in a subconscious way, versus, okay, this is my starting point. Like, today is not a good day. Today is really hard. And unfortunately, that is the situation. So what can I do? I can breathe a little bit more into it. I can give myself a little cookie reward at the end of the day if I, remind myself that everything will be okay. I could ask for a hug from, a partner. I could, wear my favorite pair of shoes so that I can feel my toes a little bit firmer on the ground. Like, what are ways for us to like give ourselves things when we are not feeling whatever we want to be feeling, so that we are with ourselves, whether this is an artist or not.
That's so good. Something, I don't know if we're going to call this a tangent or on the money with what we're talking about. You take it how you like. But years back, I was brought into a law firm to do something I don't even remember the details, but it was basically like an acting, like how to type of a workshop. Okay. And I've always thought that every industry, especially one that interacts with people, because it's rare that you have someone who has a job that doesn't anymore, but that we need that training, because acting training, the basis is, right, humanity and all the things that you're saying, and it's listening and it's understanding and it's finding out the story behind. And if we all showed up like that in our interactions in work and life, how much better off would we all be?
Yeah, that part. I think you nailed it too with like the listening part of it all. Like people forget that like acting is reacting. It's a verb, right? It's not like it's an actionable thing. And what does that actually mean? It's like to be is also an action, right? Even though it feels inactive. But the listening part of it all is like you are in a dialogue, whether it's with a person who's on stage with you or with an audience or with yourself. Like it is that. And to cultivate that skill set of actually listening, not to, for like your own gain, but really so that you can come together. I really do believe that the world would be a better place if we actually all aimed to actively listen.
It's true.
It's true.
One of my favorite podcast hosts is Barbara Barna Abel, and she always says, "Oh, you're dropping gems. You're giving us gems." So I feel like that's you right now. You're giving us lots of gems.
Thank you.
But Jennifer, I mean, I love this deep dive. Tell us though, a second step back. How did you get to where you are now? And I'm curious how it seems from reading about you and learning about you too that you didn't go acting. Set it aside, acting coach, set that aside to then do podcasts. So you kept adding. So I'm curious about that journey.
Yeah, I mean, the TLDR version of like the creative part is like you have a kid who really is good at the thing and loves the thing. And I had a very supportive, family that also allowed me to be a part of the thing that I loved. And that started with singing. It eventually turned into, more musical theater land of the acting and singing together. And then come college, it was, I went to liberal arts school, and I had a major in theater with a double concentration in acting and directing. And then I had a double minor in creative writing and philosophy. So
that's a lot of majors and minors. How'd you do that in 4 years?
I went to a modern Orthodox Jewish yeshiva my whole life, in which half of our day was English studies and half of our day was like Hebrew studies. So essentially I had 11 subjects worth of schooling my whole life to begin with. And so it actually felt strange to not be doing a lot in college, just because I had come from so many subjects in my life. So I guess that's like the answer for that, even though and also I'm ADD. So I think that there's like a level of balance that my brain needs that stimuli in order to do a lot. But it is a very logistical, real question. But I think, in college, it was a little bit more, okay, let's expand from just this thing. Went and got my MFA so that I can really hone in on the acting part. The Citizen Artistry thing that you were asking for is like essentially teaching in the community. Citizen artistry, right? So it's like you bringing your art into the community, creating work with those. I went to grad school in San Francisco. So it was, there was like a downtown high school. There were folks in the community that we were creating art with.
Oh, that's neat. I've never heard of that. That's cool.
Yeah. And that really started the like teaching coaching bug that I had been doing with like kids before grad school with musical theater, after school programs. But then it was like, oh no, in my own right, this is something that I really love. So it kind of folded itself in. And then naturally it was like, oh, you're good at this. Oh, you really like this. Oh, of course you also need to have other thrival jobs in order to like sustain the acting. So the coaching, teaching, educating part of it seems to be a natural fit. That flowed into what became the Empowered Artists Collective fall of 2020. It was an incubator program virtually for women and non-binary artists. We ran that for a year and a half of 5 cohorts of like 2.5 to 3 months each, where it was all the like life, business, emotional stuff that nobody talks about sustaining the artistry. So that felt like an extension of the coaching and teaching, as well as facilitating, as well as also me as an artist learning about myself too, while I facilitated and coached and, created these programmings for these folks. And then as that shifted into the podcast, it kind of organically came of like, I'm already having these conversations. I'm already facilitating the space. Let's do that. And then the writing part, it was undergrad. I had a creative writing degree. In grad school, I created 2 solo shows. I've haphazardly written things. I don't love the writing process at all. It's very hard for me, even though I have so many ideas. So there's a learning to love the process of that for me. But it's also like, if I want to be doing these projects and I want these things to be made and I want these stories to be told, and I also want a vessel for myself at some point, I have to be doing it. Right. So I don't know. I think the layering of it is, where does my curiosity go? Where are my energies best served? What is the need of the community as well as myself? There is a level of remembering that not everything can hold center stage at every point. So the balancing act, I have not fully figured out. I still will learn and grow probably for the rest of my life around it. Back in the day, it used to be headshot photography. That was my thrival business. Like I was, and I still dabble in photography, but it's like, sometimes things step back and move forward. And I guess maybe the advice on that one is, if something isn't filling you with insert adjective that you're wanting to be filled with in the moment, just because you take that hat off for a second doesn't mean you lose it. And it also doesn't mean that you are no longer the thing. I think that it's something that, I will say till the day I die that like you are an artist, whether you're working or not, kind of vibes of it all. Just because somebody decides to take a step back and have a family, or take a step back to be a caretaker, or take a step back because they want stability for the first time in their lives, or take a step back because they need financial security, whatever the reason might be. If you take a step back for a year, 6 years, 20 years, that doesn't take away your artistry from you at all. You are still an artist, and I imagine you will be showing up in every single way that you are doing in your current life with this artistic living that you have always done. So yeah, the balancing for me, not great at it in real time, and trying to remind myself that just because I'm not doing something as much doesn't mean I can't come back to it if it is something that I realize I'm needing or wanting again in my future.
Thank you for sharing that too, because you also mentioned about not always being great at the time management or the balancing act of it. And that's such a real thing, and helpful to hear too, for so many of us who are balancing a lot of different loves in life. And it's a blessing to have so many passions, but also it can feel so overwhelming. So I think that's a really interesting point too, and something I love about talking to people who describe themselves as multi-hyphenates is that we do have so many different passions, and that it doesn't have to be a, oh no, what do I do now? It can be a, this is amazing. I get to do a little more of this in this chapter, and in this chapter I can do a little more of that. And there are a lot of chapters, and sometimes multiple chapters at once.
Yeah. I also call them seasons too, like just seasons of your life, and again, like I don't have the perfect formula for it, but I think that there's something to be said around like embracing the shifting that I think, at least when I was first starting out, the multi-hyphenate of it all wasn't really part of the zeitgeist the same way. It was like, you are an actor, you are a singer, you stay in your lane, do the thing and do it well. And I do think that there's a lot of merit to that, like really giving a thing its time, its space, its resources, its energy, so that you can really hone the skills if that is what your heart is speaking to. But really learning to tune into one's gut and really cultivating that as a skill set of like, but why am I here? Because I want it, or because someone told me that this was what I should be doing, or because the world has said over and over again that I'm really good at this thing, but do I also love this, or am I getting fulfillment out of it? And if one day or for a long period of time, it isn't giving you what you need for that moment, the season can shift. And in that season comes new leaves, and in that season comes new snow. And like there's always newness and growth. And that is how it cyclically can change. So the curiosity, I think, in the seasons, as opposed to just being like, well, this was a chapter and this was a chapter. It's like, no, like actually where in this now, this movement of the season, can I then learn a little bit more about myself in this kind of way, which will only reinform this other thing that now I had questions about. It's all building on itself, which I think is really exciting.
I really like how you frame the seasons and adding in the new part, the new snow, the new leaves, the new. That's a great way to frame it. I really appreciate hearing that too. I mean, just thinking about the guests I've had on the show, someone this season left her love of working with stained glass for decades and came back and now has this whole basically nonprofit type of way that she works with stained glass, and she's loving it. And it's so cool. I mean, I had someone early on who went to prison for 10 years and he's totally changed his life around. I mean, talk about thinking that your life might be done for. And he was like, no, I am now an entrepreneur. I'm helping others who have left the prison system. I mean, it's just so cool. And I think we need, something you're doing with your show, and something I hope is coming out of Be the Good with Kate, is those reminders of it's never too late. There's never too many ideas. There's never, there's always somewhere to search for that passion, to keep moving forward, and to accept that, I love how you said it, the seasons change, and the curiosity within it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is most surprising to you about where you are in this world of the arts today?
For me or for the world?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm going to, of course, let you decide how to answer that one.
Yeah, I think surprising. I don't want to throw disappointed in there, but just surprising and navigating maybe some disappointment around, and maybe it's a good thing, around the fact that if I thought about my life at this age in my life, like in many respects, I'm not doing a single thing that I thought I would be doing. The way in which I thought my life was, quote unquote supposed to be.
Yeah.
And so there is a bit of disappointment or mourning the like what if of it all, or the goals of it all, or the vision of it all, and the surprises of what I have accomplished, created, contributed to, been a part of. Those things also I could never have known were possible. Like if you had told me that I would have gone to and get my MFA, I would never have believed you back when I thought I like, what was that even? If you told me that I would create a, community for artists, let alone a podcast, I'd be like, no. If you told me that I'd be writing pilots and plays, and I'd be like, that's so no. And I've done these things because I've wanted to, and it's been a part of me that has been speaking to me, and the need was there for myself and the community. And so I think it's a both and of like, there's a bit of mourning around what one thinks is supposed to be the thing. But if there's anything that I continue learning and unlearning is like, whenever I try to create a plan, nothing goes according to plan. So stop planning. Like just, so that's been surprising. And I think maybe on a more macro level, no one planned for a pandemic, and no one really planned for strikes, and streaming has changed things, and AI continues to change things. And I think the technology of it all is remains to be seen, and the way in which that impacts our creativity, and the chat GPT of it all, which, don't get me wrong, I really benefit from in a lot of respects. And also I think about it, I'm like, it's coming for our jobs. All these unknowns are also surprising, and also daunting, and also unclear. And so, not letting the fear of it all get in the way, but the curiosity around it and just the wait and see of it all does feel sometimes quite surprising.
Yeah. That's really well put and very relatable. So thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of times people want to just highlight the sunshine and roses when they're on a podcast too. So thanks for sharing that. It was very relatable to me. And I know the list is extremely long of the thousands of people that can relate to that too.
I think also, like, as a fellow podcast host, and also somebody who is, on Empowered Artists Collective podcast, like the whole point of it is to really have these candid conversations, so maybe I've cultivated a space for it. And also I crave that in the world. I'm, we have so many places for us to see each other's highlight reels. And while that's fun and beautiful, I don't think it's the reality. And I also, as we were saying earlier, like I really crave that messy, middle that has a bad label for it being messy, but like that is human. Right. And so like, I don't think it behooves anybody for somebody to, this is maybe a judgment, but I don't think it behooves anybody to go onto a podcast and just exclusively talk about the things that one does well. A resume exists for that reason. Like if you really want to see my credentials, you can see them, they exist. Right. But if you're really talking to a person, you want to like hear it so that we remind ourselves that we're not alone. Everything feels very isolating, and we're not. And so hearing other people talk and relating to their stories, and then also expanding your community by knowing that there's another person who is feeling similarly to you. And now you have potentially a resource to go to if you need something. Like, I think it only helps all of us for people to show up in that way. So thank you for creating the space for it.
Oh, hey, thanks for being here to talk about it. I think you're the 131st maybe guest I've talked to for the show, and not one person has said, oh, I graduated college and I'm doing exactly what I thought I was going to do. Not one. So I love these reminders, and just this, it's so eye-opening to see all of the options out there and people's perspectives. So Jennifer, thanks so much for sharing this. And please tell us where we can find you online. And for people listening, if you're driving or something, this is also in the show notes to catch it after.
Yeah. You can find all of these hats on my website. That's jenniferapple.net. Having Apple as a last name is difficult in the world, so we've got a net out there. You can find, my acting performer stuff on there, my coaching things, my podcast, and my writer hat. They all exist on that one space. If you are wanting to coach with me, that is an easy link on the coaching page where you can either email me or you can book directly through my calendar scheduler through there. In terms of social media, it's at Jennifer Apple _. Again, the apple is a cute little moment. So the Apple _. And then also for the podcast, it's at Empowered Artists Collective. And then their website for that is empoweredartistcollective.com. So, and you can stream the podcast on YouTube as well as anywhere that you listen. So you can tune in from any of and all of those places. But I'd like to think that I am somebody who wants to communicate with people as long as people are respectful and kind. And so, feel free to reach out, whether it is working with me, whether you want to hire me, or whether you have more questions or have curiosities around things that I've said, feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Jennifer. This was an awesome chat today.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. If you found this helpful, a 5-star review, like, or comment means the world to me. And if you found insight in this episode, chances are someone else will too. Share with a friend to give them a boost today. Until next time, I'm Kate Chericello-Tente, and this was Be the Good with Kate.